Healthy aging, life after 70, food as medicine, natural health that actually works. Not from a doctor trying to sell you something. Not from an influencer with a ring light. From people who lived past 100 and earned every single word. This is The Art of Aging.
Hi there, welcome to the Art of Aging podcast. Let's jump in.
There is a bottle in most kitchens that contains a compound researchers once described as behaving in small ways like a mild anti-inflammatory medication. Not a drug, just an ordinary cooking oil, doing something most people never knew it could do. It's been sitting on the counter the whole time. A man I'll call Sal grew up in a household where olive oil wasn't a choice. It was just what cooking meant. Bread dipped in it before dinner, a spoonful drizzled over vegetables. He left that habit behind in his 30s, swapped it for butter and convenience, the way a lot of us drift away from the things our grandparents did without ceremony or decision. At 66, sitting in a cardiologist's office after a routine check revealed elevated markers, he heard his doctor mention something that stopped him cold. Go back to how your grandmother cooked. Here's what Sal's doctor was pointing toward, and what's worth understanding. High-quality extra virgin olive oil contains a compound called Oleocanthal, which has been studied for anti-inflammatory properties. In fact, researchers have noted that oleocanthal's chemical action shares some similarities with ibuprofen, although in much smaller dietary amounts. It's not a substitute for medication, but it's a genuinely interesting finding about an everyday food. Extra virgin olive oil is also rich in monounsaturated fats and polyphenols, compounds that researchers have linked to cardiovascular health over the long term, particularly in populations that consume it as a primary source of dietary fat, as is traditional in much of the Mediterranean. This is part of why the Mediterranean dietary pattern, heavy on olive oil, vegetables, fish, and legumes, has been studied extensively and consistently associated with lower rates of heart disease in long-term population research. No single tablespoon changes a life, but a consistent pattern, sustained over years, is one of the more well-supported dietary habits in the research on healthy aging. Here's the practical version, and Sal's own version of it. About 1 tablespoon of extra virgin olive oil a day. And the word extra virgin matters here because it's the least processed form and retains the most of these beneficial compounds. A good quality bottle often has a slightly peppery, bitter finish at the back of the throat. That bitterness is actually a sign of higher oleocanthal content, not a flaw. Drizzle it raw over vegetables, salads, or finished dishes, rather than only cooking with it at high heat, since some compounds degrade with prolonged exposure to high temperature. Dip bread in it instead of butter. Use it as the primary fat in a meal, rather than an occasional garnish. Sal started simply. A spoonful over his dinner vegetables every night, the way his grandmother once did it, without thinking twice. But what Sal told me, months later, wasn't really about cholesterol numbers. It's strange, he said. Doing something my grandmother did automatically and realizing she probably never thought of it as health. It was just how you loved your family. You fed them well, with real food, made slowly. He said going back to that habit didn't feel like a medical intervention. It felt like reconnecting to a version of himself and a version of his family that he'd quietly let drift away in the name of convenience. There's something in that worth sitting with. So much of what we now call wellness was once simply called culture. The inherited wisdom of people who cooked slowly, ate together, and didn't need a study to tell them which habits served a long life. Sometimes the most powerful health advice isn't new information. It's permission to go back to something old that we never should have left. 1 tablespoon of extra virgin olive oil a day, used raw when possible, as part of a broader pattern of whole foods. Not a miracle, but one of the more well-supported habits in the research on long-term heart and overall health. And sometimes going back to it means going back to more than just a healthier diet. This episode reflects personal perspective and general wellness information, not medical advice. Please consult your doctor regarding your individual dietary needs, cholesterol, or any medical condition before making significant changes to your diet. If this brought back a memory of your own kitchen, send it to one person who needs it today. Follow The Art of Aging at Art of Aging Podcast for more honest conversations about aging well.